It is 5:30. Call to order the meeting of the Alameda County Water District Financing Authority. Do we have a roll call, please?
Director Sethi,
Here.
Akbari,
Here.
Gunther,
Here.
Huang,
Here.
Lucky,
Paul?
Director Lucky, Anjali.
Paul, you're muted.
No, Paul's
Sorry,
already.
I was on mute.
Okay.
Here. Here.
And Director Weed.
Here. Thank you. Salute to the flag. We have one on the screen, so let us see. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The public comments, if there's any member of the public that wishes to address the board, now is your opportunity on this item, being a special meeting. There appear to be none, so let us then move to the consent calendar, which is the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move the approval.
And I'll second.
Moved by Director Gunther, seconded by Director Wong. Roll call, please.
Director Sethi,
Yes.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Lucky,
Yes.
and Weed.
Aye. You know, the next item is our AB 361. I wonder if that could not be put on a consent calendar as well. But let's take it. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. If there's no comment, roll call, please.
Director Sethi,
Yes.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Lucky,
Yes.
and Weed.
Aye. Next item 6, which is staff presentations. At this time, we could have Mr. Wunderlich present this item.
Yeah, thank you, President Weed, members of the Financing Authority Board. I'm going to go ahead and give a brief presentation on item 6.1. And then our financial advisor, Darren Hodge from PFM, is here, and he is going to give the presentation for item 6.2. And so I will go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. And if I could just get an affirmative from the district secretary when my screen's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Great, thank you. All right, so first, I'm just going to give the board an update on our state revolving fund loan because that is relevant to our upcoming bond refunding, as well as consideration of new money as a part of this process, and just briefly sharing some financial planning metrics to help explain why staff is considering a small amount of new money at this time. So first, it's been quite a while, almost a couple of years, but the board did previously adopt resolutions authorizing an SRF loan for the AMI project. And it's been planned for half of the AMI capital cost, which is just a touch under $20 million. And we are working with the State Water Resources Control Board and have been advancing that loan application. And we are very nearly done. And because the interest rate through the state revolving fund program is so low, it's 1.1% for the current calendar year. We expect borrowing $19.5 million to save about $1.9 million compared to what it would cost us to issue our own debt based on current market conditions. Unfortunately, one step in the process is a federal approval through the Federal Department of Labor of the prevailing wage determination that's being paid out through that project. And the prevailing wage that was approved by the state was not approved by the federal government. And the initial determination by the federal government would increase project costs by $2.3 million. And obviously that's a cost increase that exceeds the savings by borrowing through the state revolving fund program. And so we do have an appeal pending with the federal government, but at this time, that's still in process. Excuse me. And so the current bond issuance that we're going through was originally planned solely to refund our 2012 bonds at a lower interest rate. But now we're looking at adding some new money to that for a few reasons. First one, of course, is to fund that $19.5 million originally planned for the state revolving fund loan if our appeal is unsuccessful. And of course, we're hopeful to get a determination on that appeal within the next few weeks. Second, though, we're also now looking at adding an additional $10 million to provide additional financial resilience, basically as an additional financial management tool based on the financial effects of the current drought. And then, depending on the district's financial results, because the additional 10 million, as you'll see when we get to our metrics, still results in fund balances below our targets in the out years. And so, depending on our financial results, because we do tend to be conservative in our financial planning, so the results may be better than expected, but depending on those results, as well as what decisions are made between now and then, it would be another potential good opportunity if we did want to look at additional borrowing for our capital program, to look at doing that again in 2025, concurrent with refunding of the 2015 bonds. And so for tonight, it's just a presentation and we're seeking feedback from the board. But in March, we will come to request authorization for a bond issuance, and that would include a not to exceed amount of new money. And so here are the reference metrics. We will get into much more detail on this in the regular board meeting later this evening as part of the public hearing on the rates item. So we're not intending to get into a lot of detail on this. Again, it's just to establish why staff is considering adding on some additional new money at this point in time. And so you can see that we're estimating now that at fiscal year ending 2027, we would be about 18 million below our reserve target. If we added an additional 10 million in new money, then we would close that gap a little bit to 9.5 million. And so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from? It does not appear we have anyone from the public attending this. Oh, we do. Is there any comments or questions from members of the public? There being none, is there any comment or questions from members of the board?
All right.
I have one comment because it's something I don't quite understand, which is the fact that California has some of the highest prevailing wages in the entire country as a state and economy. And I just cannot figure out why we're not meeting the federal requirement, because for most of the country in other states, the prevailing wage requirements are quite lower.
Yeah, so my understanding of the reason for the issue here is about a disagreement, or really from our perspective, maybe a misunderstanding by the Federal Department of Labor on the skill level required to do the work involved in this project. And so they have suggested that a much higher skill level is required than we think is necessary. And so that pushes you up into a higher prevailing wage bracket.
Well, Director Lottie is with us here from USD, and they were just awarded a WIFIA loan of $250 million. I wonder if they encountered the same situation on their project.
You're on mute, Slahi. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Not that I'm aware of.
All right.
We do
Yeah,
not
and
have
I-
that issue.
And I'll just add that from what I've heard, this AMI type of project is a type of project where there's not a lot of precedent in terms of the skill level and prevailing wages required. Other types of projects are maybe a bit more established.
Yeah, and if I may add, Grumawok, Director of Engineering and Technology, that's absolutely correct. Mr. Wunderlich is right that the type of project that the AMI involves is more of installation of devices and meters, which is not a very recurrent type of activity. And it's more of an interpretation on the federal government's end, whether we should use a certain job classification for installation of meters, which was in fact supported by the state water board. So the state staff agrees with the district's position. So we are working through those issues as we speak.
Yeah, and the last point I had is that we went out for competitive bid on what we're doing. And as long as we have a satisfied contractor to do the work, I would think that would meet the burden, that we're providing satisfactory wages.
Yes, we're fully complying with the DIR, the state wage requirements. So we have no issues there, and we believe we have a good case, and we hope for a resolution sooner than later.
Okay.
I agree with Director Sethi. I don't see this. I mean, we meet the state of California. I thought had the toughest. Apparently not. So I'm satisfied with what staff's doing, but a little surprised. Actually, very surprised.
I would be interested if there was a union issue with the pipe fitters or one of the other unions which have a different categories, and that the employees are being proposed would or would not fit into specific union groups. But that being what it is, I would also note that when we talk about the WIFIA loan, even in the EPA, they talked about a loan. It's really a loan guarantee in which you are able to get the advantage of the lower interest rates. It's not a true loan from the government. So, thank you.
President Weed, if I can ask a quick question on the same topic, what's the process and likelihood of being successful in resolving this issue?
Well, we have filed an appeal with the Department of Labor, but I will ask Mr. Awoke to offer his perspective on that question.
Yeah, we don't have a specific timeline. We are continuing to check in with the representative with the federal government, but we will continue to see what solutions they would offer. But at this point, we don't have a specific timeline.
Are we confident that we can win the appeal given that the state agrees with us?
Personally, I am confident, but I don't know if I want to commit saying that the federal government would make a certain decision. But yeah, I do feel that we have a strong case.
But I think Director Akbari, you raise a good point, because it's possible, although I sincerely hope we'll get resolution, within the next few weeks, but it's possible we need to decide about our own process here with our own debt issuance before it's resolved. That is possible.
Okay.
All right.
Director Wee, may I follow up on that?
Please.
So, Mr. Wunderlich, so when is the drop date that we need to make a decision for our own bond?
Yeah, so what we will ask the board for next month is approval for a not to exceed amount. And then it's probably a week or two after that when we would need to post documents that finalize it. Depending on how things progress and what market conditions look like, of course, there's always the option of slightly delaying our own refunding, right? If we feel that we really need to know the outcome and we're close to getting that answer.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I would note that commercial paper has been an option used by some agencies rather than going out for other debt. And commercial paper is relatively quick turnaround, although not something you want to hold for a long period of time.
So,
Thank you.
then if there are no further questions on this item, I will stop my share and I will ask Mr. Hodge, our financial advisor, to go ahead and lead us through the next item, where he'll give us an overview of the proposed refunding.
Good evening. Thank you, John. Should I share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right, perfect. Let me go ahead and do that real quick. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, as John mentioned, tonight I'm going to spend some time going over the proposed Series 2022 bonds. And the 2022 bonds are comprised of two transactions. The first, as John mentioned, is a refunding of our Series 2012 bonds. And the refunding is essentially a refinancing for interest rate savings. Given that rates are now lower than they are when we issued the bonds, we have an opportunity, just like you would refinance your mortgage, to lower our future debt service payments on those bonds. The second item, as John mentioned, is that there's potentially a new money component. And the reason that we are presenting these together is that if they're sold concurrently, there's some cost efficiencies that we can realize. You know, you're not having to get multiple sets of ratings. You're not needing to issue multiple preliminary official statements. And so it made sense to combine them into one transaction. And one of the things I will note is that in our presentation, we are assuming the new money is issued in an amount of 29.5 million. However, we understand that's kind of an up to amount. It could be lower than that, depending on what happens with the SRF loan. Before I go into the specifics of the two transactions, I want to quickly just talk about the market. So right now, what we've experienced over the last month is an increase in interest rates. And I want to focus on two lines here. What this chart shows is the AAA MMD index. What AAA MMD is, it is the municipal markets tax exempt index. So these represent the rate that the highest of credits would hypothetically price at. And so this is kind of our index when we go out and price bonds, of how close we want to price to the MMD index. I want to focus on the two colored lines here. The first is gray. So this gray line represents MMD curve as of 1 month ago. The blue line represents current MMD as of February 1st. What you can see is there's a pretty dramatic increase in rates over that time frame. That was caused by a number of things. The first was inflationary expectations, as well as actions, or not actions, but communication and expectations of future Fed fund rate increases. So what does that all mean for our transactions? Obviously, higher rates means higher cost of borrowing. But as we'll talk about in just a second here on both the refunding and the new money, it's important to keep these rate increases in context. Even in spite of these rate increases over the last month, from a historical basis, rates are still attractive. And so when we talk about the impacts on the refunding, on the Series 2012 bonds, these are callable beginning June 1st, 2022. So we're not able to actually close on these refunding bonds on a tax-exempt basis until the beginning of March. And so that was one of the drivers in our timeline for the transaction. Now, in today's market, if we were to refinance these bonds, we would lock in PV savings of about $3.8 million, which represents PV savings on a percentage basis of refunded bonds of about 9.9 million. And that's pretty attractive. You know, historically, anytime we're able to lock in savings above even 3 to 5%, we were pretty satisfied with that result. So these are attractive PV savings. What I've shown here on the right, these are our cash flow savings. So every year in today's market, we would be reducing our debt service by about $240,000 a year. Now, obviously, the results I'm showing are today's market. They're subject to change as we get closer to pricing. The second component is the new money bonds. And what I've run here is assuming a $29.5 million financing. This is kind of the upper end of the limit. And in today's market, given how low rates are overall, we would we would issue our new money bonds, assuming a 20-year term, so 20 years of level debt service, at a cost of about 2.24%, or our true interest cost. So pretty low cost of financing. Now, what it means from our overall debt service, how would our debt service increase? Issuing that 29 million results in an increase in debt service of about $1.8 million a year. So what does that mean in terms of our debt service coverage? What I've shown down here at the bottom is a chart that's our aggregate debt service post Series 2020 issuance as compared to our fiscal 2021 net revenues. And you can see that we maintain substantial debt service coverage, at least last year, which is very important from a rating agency standpoint, as well as from a marketing standpoint when we go out and begin marketing these bonds to investors. Now, when we talk about marketing, the most important document that we have with regards to marketing is our preliminary official statement, or our POS. And as I mentioned, this is our primary marketing document, and we're not able to have discussions with investors until this document is posted online, or what we call printed. The preliminary official statement describes the characteristics of the Series 2022 bonds and describes all the characteristics and the considerations that a reasonable investor would want to know when making an investment decision. And so this document contains information about the district, security of repayment for the bonds, obligations of various parties, as well as the terms and covenants that the district is entering into with the investor. Now, this document will be part of the package that's brought to the board for approval on March 10th. And so you will have an opportunity to review, comment, and obviously sign off on that. In terms of the big picture, the next items coming up, key deadlines here, the week of March 7th, we're anticipating receiving ratings from both S&P and Moody's. On March 10th, we'll be coming to the board for consideration for approval. That then puts us in a position to post the preliminary official statement or begin our marketing period the week of March 14th, ultimately leading up to a pricing the week of March 21st and closing 2 weeks thereafter. And at closing, that's where we would receive the proceeds from the bond issuance. And at that time, the Series 2012 bonds would be diffused. And with that, that concludes my presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? There being none, is there any comment or questions from members of the board?
I think there's a member of the public who wishes to speak.
Oh, okay, yes, Ken.
Yes, I just want to quickly say, lend my support to this. I think refinancing existing bonds with lower interest rate is always a good thing for the district. And I also do support the option to bring in new money. I just wish we could do this a little bit more quickly, because I think it's a done deal that the interest rates are on the rise. But I can see that the staff is doing everything possible to hit their first call date possible in the 2012 series bonds. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, there are no other public comments. Members of the board, is there anyone who wishes to?
Director Sethi here.
Yes.
So I have similar comments to Mr. Nishimura. I had discussed with Mr. Stevenson, our general manager, last fall, that about my own introspection on these municipal bond markets going back decades, that there always seems to be a low point in the market right at the end of January, when fresh paper is coming to the market. But understanding that the first or the callable period was June 1, and the first time we could exercise that callable exercise was March 1. It's too bad we couldn't capture the very low end of the market right now. But for public benefit, I do want to note that when we went to the market in 2012 and 2015, in both instances, we thought we were getting the most attractive rates that had been out there in 30 years. And we certainly did capture the bottom of the market in both those instances. And the fact that we can refinance now and even get to a lower rate produces some really good savings on behalf of all of our customers moving forward between now and around 2040. So good work to the staff, and I wish our bond counsel and disclosure counsel well on getting all the documents done. Thank you for all your efforts.
All right, thank you. Other comments from members of the board? This item does not require a motion, does it? Correct?
That's correct. This was an informational presentation only. Next month, action by the Financing Authority Board will be required to authorize us to move forward.
All right, thank you. All right.
And so that's the last item that staff has on the agenda for this evening,
Great, I appreciate it.
for this board meeting.
President Weed,
Please.
if I might say one other thing. We see the 10-year treasury rate getting up to 2% right now. Longer term rates are above that. But I think one other important thing for the public to recognize is that while we are in a short-term inflationary environment, nevertheless, the long-term inflation outlook is for, 2% plus per year. So the fact that we can get bond financing at close to what the inflation rate means that we are essentially looking at zero costs on our money and prospectively a negative interest rate over the long term. So this is a really good deal for our district.
All right. Well, thank you. And we note our meters will be more accurate and generate a bit more income. So thank you. If there's no other item then before the board, we prepare to adjourn, and we'll start the next meeting in about 3 minutes.